This is the Wire for 2300 Zulu, February 10th, 2025. Precedence is routine. Information cutoff is 2200. Bottom line up front. Unrest brewing in Lincoln Heights, Ohio. Explosion occurs at chemical factory in Pennsylvania. Aircraft collision in Scottsdale results in one fatality. On the home front in Arizona, this afternoon an aircraft collision was reported at the Scottsdale airport, which resulted in at least one fatality and several people injured, analysts comment. As this is currently a developing situation, few details are confirmed at this time. Local reports suggest that a private Learjet 35 experienced a hard landing, which resulted in a landing gear collapse and the subsequent ground collision with another parked jet. In Pennsylvania, yesterday morning an explosion and subsequent fire were reported at a chemical factory in Crawford County. Shelter-in-place advisories were reported in the vicinity of the Parker Lord Corporation in Sagertown, as the incident resulted in a total of 15 people being hospitalized for various injuries sustained throughout the incident. As of this morning, the fire has been extinguished and an investigation into the cause of the fire is ongoing. In Ohio, civil disturbances were reported yesterday in Lincoln Heights following various political or social protests. A small group of individuals wearing or carrying neo-Nazi or National Socialist paraphernalia marched along a section of highway in the vicinity of the on-ramp to Interstate 75. The march concluded on top of the overpass to the highway, likely so as to allow their demonstration materials, flags, signs, etc., to be seen by passers-by on the interstate below. In response to this demonstration, the residents of the nearby low-income housing projects have emplaced what are self-described as checkpoints throughout the area. The main checkpoint is located at the corner of Mangum Drive and Dorothy Court at grid 16 Sierra, Golf Juliet, 19975, 46914. Other checkpoints have been in place throughout the area. However, most of the activity could largely be described as the locals of housing projects standing around on various street corners with guns, on the lookout for anyone who they disapprove of, analysts comment. Additionally, locals posted on social media that they slashed the tires of participants of the demonstration on the overpass, though at this time it's possible that random vehicles were attacked, which were not necessarily related to any protest or demonstration. Analyst comments for this wire. The situation in Ohio, while not entirely uncommon, is at risk of becoming a local conflagration, as evidenced by the actual people on the street and their first-hand post on social media. The dozens of military-aged males, all openly armed and demanding for passers-by to roll down their windows to check for certain people transiting the area, these are not entirely the hallmarks of a stable situation. On the other side of the conflict, demonstrations by local neo-Nazis were absolutely intended to stoke this response, as there really isn't anything in the local area but very heavily entrenched housing projects. Once the hornet's nest was kicked, the initial protesters rapidly moved out of the area. It's not immediately clear as to which group the neo-Nazis were affiliated with, as all of the paraphernalia demonstrated during the protest was generic and not indicative of one specific group. This does not appear to have mattered much, however, as they were not on location for very long before departing as the locals began to respond to their demonstration. Also of note, the checkpoints, as geolocated based on social media posts, aren't actually in the community of the armed individuals. A few sites where armed men have been observed are deeper into the housing projects, but the main checkpoint is not located at the entrance of a subdivision or apartment complex, rather being situated on a heavily trafficked thoroughfare that leads to a major highway. An important consideration to think about as civil unrest events become more common is the nature of the philosophical debate of these types of incidents, weighed against the tactical situation on the ground. As firearms are involved in the situation in Ohio, the 2A community has already weighed in as expected, mostly to make this more of a discussion about rights and community defense. However, at a more local level, it must be noted that this specific case is not a peaceful display of constitutional rights. These people are using firearms to openly threaten others and restrict access to public roads at gunpoint. Conversely, the group that started all of this is worthy of mention too. Carrying out a march in an area that would very heavily take umbrage with that ideology is not entirely endearing to one's cause. However, purely in terms of the tactical situation on the ground, an unarmed group of protesters waving flags on the sidewalk is quite different than armed males running a vehicle checkpoint, as poorly done as it is. As such, it would be unwise to automatically assume that everyone publicly displaying a firearm is doing so because they wish to support the Constitution. Sometimes this activity is instead a precursor to violence and/or a brewing gang turf war in an extremely high crime area. Many will applaud the efforts of community defense, while also ignoring that this is technically not defense, but an offensive action that is taking place on public roads other taxpayers are paying for. Many others will decry that until a round leaves the chamber, no crime has been committed. though in this case this technically isn't true. The restriction of lawful travel on public roads based on race or ideology is generally considered by many to be a crime. The larger idea, being centered in the ideological space, negates the indications and warnings of what is likely to come. Local police have been observed transiting through the main checkpoint, with both the armed men and the officers themselves largely ignoring each other for the time being. However, if this situation in Lincoln Heights continues, it's only a matter of time until someone gets shot, either deliberately or accidentally. For now, the situation will probably simmer down over the next few days, pending any other pot stirring in the local area. However, if protesters show up in the same place twice, the situation is very likely to turn violent in rapid order. This concludes The Wire for 2300 Zulu, February 10th, 2025.